Wherefore, Series 3, Episode 39. The aurochs are in town. They have taken over Mill's courtyard and there is a lot of coffee, cake and laughter. Meeting up as aurochs has continued through lockdown because there wasn't much option to do anything else. The call of the moon is too strong and the newer members of the herd have no control over showing up. While there are studies showing COVID might be caught by non-human creatures, there's no decent research into how it impacts on shapeshifters. It is worth noting, however, that shapeshifters tend to meet outside to express their animal aspects and that outside is notoriously well ventilated. There is no evidence from Stroud to suggest that spending time outside as an otherwise extinct wild cow puts you at any risk of catching COVID. They've been more cautious about meeting up in their human skins, not least because there are rather a lot of them now. The easing of restrictions hasn't stopped them from being careful. The odds are that being indoors when not aurochs would put them at as much risk as anyone else. Being inside as aurochs would just be silly. It is interesting to note that people who deal with magic turn out to be more and not less resilient when it comes to conspiracy theories. This is probably because real magic is dangerous, sometimes complicated, and takes some figuring out. People in the habit of navigating between two different skins have to develop a lot of critical thinking skills just to stay safe. You don't trust lightly, and you certainly don't trust people who claim authority but offer no evidence for it. When you're in the habit of treating good information as a matter of life and death, you aren't going to fall for loopy conspiracy theories. Some people, like Wizard Tim, are born into magic and grow up knowing things. The majority of magical people, as with our herd of shape-shifting aurochs, find magic along the way. This means a process of trying to figure out how on earth magic as you experience it relates to consensus reality. Magical folk have generally taken at least one long, hard look at themselves and wondered if they were crazy and tried to figure out how to tell. The conspiracy theory folk do not wonder if they are mad, but always believe themselves to have more insight than anyone who does not agree with them. They do not develop critical thinking skills. Magical people also spend a lot of time dealing with non-magical people who want to be magical. Imagine, if you will, being an auroch shapeshifter at the tail end of a hideous period, stood in a queue for the olive store. The person behind you in the queue is talking loudly to someone about how sensitive they are. They feel vibes and read minds, apparently. It's really hard for them being in a banal space like this where there is literally no magic. And if this queue doesn't speed up, they are going to have to leave. This sort of thing happens a lot. It is not unusual for people with this kind of belief system to be vulnerable to dubious ideas that come with a side order of feeling special and important. Magic both is and isn't irrational, and whatever path you take, this will be an important topic to get to grips with. Magic often has rules, but they are not the kinds of rules that humans are used to. Cause and effect are not wholly linear. Sometimes magic is more like making a ripple in a pond. Sometimes magic is like emulating rain and then waiting to see if the worms come up. Sometimes magic is a lot like being a worm, taking the dead and chewing them over and making them into the basis for new life. Necromancy tends to get such a bad press from people who don't really understand it. Magic is Sabrina walking into Mill's courtyard and seeing that it is full of people, and pausing. It is that moment of sensing that the surface appearance here is not quite what it seems to be, that there is something else as well. Hearing the echoes of mighty ancient feet even if you cannot see them. There are times when it is right to dive in and explore, and times when it is better to recognize that this is not for you, and you do not belong here. Sabrina respects the mystery and goes to get a hot chocolate somewhere else. Magic is also the way these people are deliberately weaving their lives together. The aurochs are making threads of mutual care and interest that go far beyond what happens to them at the full moon. They are making a community, and there is magic in that. By weaving themselves together, they influence the future and shape the lives they will live. When people approach each other with so much intent, the weave itself takes note, and this will increase the amount of apparent coincidence for them. The weave responds well to people who are making things. It is interesting to look at what the weave does around the conspiracy theorists. The usual suspects are out on the high street. When challenged about the way their publication has links to far-right groups, they make odd, incoherent noises. They do not know there are problems. They do not examine their beliefs or who has sold them their distorted take on reality. They cannot see how the weave becomes a web sometimes, and how they make it sticky with their own mess. I do not like to see people soiling the weave in this way, but the weave itself doesn't like it either, and we work together to try and localize the damage and stop it spreading. For the people who have made web, there may be no way out. They roll the threads ever more tightly around themselves. They tell each other that they are getting the disease now because agents working on behalf of the deep state have infected them with the virus they did not previously believe existed. It's definitely a hoax. And when their remaining friends fall ill, they have to try and make up new stories. They are never wrong, though. And if they die, they are martyrs to their cause. Round and round they turn, stickier and tighter all the time, depriving themselves of air and liberty. The auroch shapeshifters think it funny that the anti-vaxxers call them sheep. Close, they whisper to each other. You nearly had it there, so close. What shame can there be in being a herd animal? What problem could they have with doing things that protect and support their fellow herd members? Real magic is dangerous, but it also teaches you what to care about. If you don't care, it will hollow you out, leaving you a weird husk. As is increasingly the size of it with Tim's alarmingly desiccated mum. Without care, magic will destroy you. But it's not just a magical issue. If there is only vanity, selfishness and self-importance, whatever you do will only cause you harm. Oh, it may look like success on the outside, but on the inside all is grey and sticky and spinning ever more tightly closed. Without care there are only spider webs, and that which dwells in the webs, and the hunger of that which dwells in the webs. Tangle yourself up enough, and you will be eaten.